Okay, we're live.
Thank you, Becca. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the November 4th meeting of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, the Northborough Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Hope everybody's doing well. I think the first thing I would like to do tonight is just wish everybody out there a happy Diwali. Hope everybody's having a fun holiday. So just wanted to start off with that. First item on the agenda for tonight is the approval of the September 30th minutes.
Can I just do my
Oh, yes. Sorry
my
about that.
governance
Yes.
spiel? That's okay. I'm sure you're sick of hearing me say it, but we got to do it.
Probably
So-
not as much as you are of reading.
All right. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law June 16th, 2021, this meeting will be conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted. This meeting will be live streamed, but will have no option for public participation. To view or listen only, visit the YouTube link posted on our agenda on the town's website.
Thank you. And now that we are legal, first item on the agenda is the approval of the September 30th meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
Moved by Shika, second by Miriam. Roll call vote. Mary Leach,
Aye.
Lauren Bailey Jones,
Abstain.
Deidre Writing,
I abstain.
Shika Holland,
Aye.
Becca Meekins,
Aye.
Miriam Ibrahimi,
Aye.
and I, Tim Kalin, vote aye. So minutes are approved. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is a joint meeting with the Community Affairs Committee to discuss diversity calendar of events and final recommendations. Just would like to welcome Lisa Smith and Susie Sislicka from the Community Affairs Committee. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I know it's a busy time of year, so thanks for taking the time. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
So wanted to have the Community Affairs Committee in to talk about items that we've discussed for this year, and then plans for 2022 that we as the Diversity and Inclusion Committee will include in our recommendations to the Board of Selectmen. So I know, Susie, that we've had some preliminary discussions about doing something for Hanukkah this year on Town Common. So why don't we discuss that first, and then just have a discussion around 2022 ideas and possible things that we can include in our recommendations. So like I said, we've had some preliminary discussions about hosting or holding an event on Town Common around Hanukkah. One of the residents was willing to do some fundraising to purchase a menorah for Town Common so that we can hold an event. The tough thing with holding an event this year has always been the timeline. Hanukkah is early this year, at least earlier than I typically remember. It starts November 28th. So it's only, 3.5 weeks from now. So there's a timeline concern, and then also some concerns around the appearance of being equal with every community in town. If we're gonna push to hold something for Hanukkah this year, then, just to be equal and equitable, we should be pushing to hold events for every community in town. It shouldn't just be one specific community. So did anybody have any thoughts on that? Yes, Susie.
Well, first of all, thank you for having us. We really enjoyed our first meeting with you guys. And Pam and I had gone back to Community Affairs, the full committee, and spoke about how inspired we were after meeting with you and how we were looking at every event with a new lens and how we can bring in different groups and make everyone feel welcome in our community, and how can we do that. We were approached by a resident about a menorah before the pandemic, and we had started preliminary work on that. I know you guys yourselves, I had been reviewing some minutes, had discussed a menorah as well, like what if we brought in the menorah? I do realize too that the town common doesn't have a policy written yet. I just filled out the application. We just had the jack-o'-lantern stroll. I don't know if any of you got to visit it or vote on it. Very creative residents in town. So we'll say that right now. Every year we're like, every pumpkin that came, we were like, oh my goodness. Like we just couldn't believe it because a lot of them were done by children. So it was a great event. But I know even from filling out that application that there's no clear policy about how to use it. So that brings me back. The town common, I don't even know if it was fully in use when we first started discussing a menorah. And it brings back to the tree lighting ceremony, which although it is in honor of Neil Ellsworth, it also has religious connotation, having a tree being lit in the center of town every year, even though we do try to, we have the Ellsworth family there. We talk about him. We have the military, the flags there. It does have a religious connotation. So initially we discussed having the menorah there, but there were too many trees. The space just would not have worked out. And those trees, a lot of them were cut down due to disease last year. So I do want to start out that we're not married to the idea of being at the town common, even if it is for this year. And we have a pretty well-oiled PR machine for community affairs. And if we could tie it in together with our tree lighting ceremony, which is December 4th, that also falls during Hanukkah this year. So even though it seems like it's not a lot of time to plan, we could get a menorah in time. And I have someone ready to zoom in at any time if we need to dive more into the Jewish aspect of it, because I am not Jewish and I don't want to misstate anything, but there is a way to have it temporarily near the tree until a policy could be hammered out for the town common. And the fact that it falls during the tree lighting this year, I think next year it's a lunar calendar, and I believe next year it's in the middle of December. So it would be easier to have it along kind of as a part of our whole ceremony. I also want to just give a little snippet about what's going to happen earlier during the day. I know that you might be familiar with the trolley, just to give you like an idea of the day. The person that ran the trolley committee had moved out of town during the pandemic. So it was being pushed, not pushed, but offered to our committee. And that's a lot for us to take on. So I kind of pulled together some superstar planners in our town, and they're working with businesses to do something to highlight the local businesses, the small businesses, the week beforehand, and kind of doing a snowman scavenger hunt. So it's the kids during the week can get stamps on a card and bring it to the tree lighting ceremony. So we will have that crowd. I've been approached by a couple community bands to come and sing because they don't have a place to perform right now. So there's a new one called Women of Note, and it's an all-female group. The woman who contacted me is a recent Algonquin graduate. So we're in discussions with them. There's a Northborough community chorus that has just formed, and then there's the Z Children's Chorus. So we're trying to put all these pieces together. So we are reaching out to the community as a whole to come together and enjoy and celebrate small business. But I just wanted to clarify that we don't have to be married to the town common, because I do understand that there's no policy there, and we really don't know the rules and how we're going to use that space. And I totally understand that we might need that, but that's where I wanted to lead off. So if you'd like my friend to call in, I can have him call in. He has the information and he's ready. But I just wanted to let you know that part. Thank you. That was a lot of information. Sorry.
No, it's very helpful. Thank you. Any comments?
I think it would be helpful to bring in the person Susie has in mind to share with us thoughts on the Hanukkah celebration and what would be appropriate or not appropriate.
Yeah, I'm really curious if you guys have reached out, your committee has reached out to the Jewish community or any local rabbis and kind of spoken to them, because, you know, we don't want to be speaking for a certain community.
Right. So Mitch has done all of that work, and he's been in, I know Miriam knows Mitch well. So he has taken that aspect on, and let me call him on my bat phone. Okay. So we'll see. I know he's watching on YouTube, so I just told him to call in. But he advised us, he was the one that originally came to us, and it was something that we were thinking about it. But when he originally came, it was too late for us to plan. But it's been something that we've been talking about since, and then pandemic. So.
Okay, that's really great to hear. Thanks.
Oh, and the trolley day, I don't know if I mentioned, we're not doing the trolley because we figured children weren't vaccinated then. We didn't know when it was coming out. So the trolley aspect, we'll take a back burner until next year. And that's why we're doing the week long, in case I wasn't clear about that. But hi, Mitch. Thank you.
Susie. Tim, thanks so much for inviting me in. So I was
watching. How you doing?
I was watching the earlier part of the meeting. I know there's a delay before the video goes out to YouTube, so it's possible I may have missed a moment or two, but I'm happy to answer any questions. I did hear Susie say that I've spoken with a rabbi, so the Beth Tikva Synagogue, which is one of the 3 synagogues in Westboro. I know their board of directors that I used to serve on has voted to support this, and the rabbi has committed to participate to the extent of, whatever the town would like. They can also be the fundraising vehicle for the menorah so that people could donate to it and it would be tax deductible. I don't see any problem reaching what I estimate to be around $2,200–2,300 that needs to be raised to purchase it. And I've spoken with the vendor and they have it readily available. This year, as Susie pointed out, happens to be a really good year to introduce the menorah to the community because it doesn't need a second event. So the sort of community lighting could take place, obviously with the blessing of community affairs, simultaneous with the event that they already have planned to light the tree. The menorah would be lit all 8 nights of Hanukkah, but typically there's just one night of sort of the party around it, if you will. And then in future years, we would figure out the appropriate venue, whether it be where the tree is, or I think ideally it would be the town common, but we don't have to worry about that for this year.
Mitch, what size is the menorah?
The one I'm looking at is a 9-foot tall menorah, which is the size that I see in most communities. I've attended lightings in Westboro and in Worcester. They all seem to be the 9-foot size. I think that's the same size that Shrewsbury has, although I haven't seen it in person. I know the person who handles the lighting of that one. They're available as high as 12 feet. I imagine you want it to be large enough to be above the heads of most of the people around you, but not so large that you couldn't somehow light it if you wanted to light it with a candle or with a real flame, and not have it get potentially out of hand. These menorahs are capable of being lit with LED light bulbs or with live fire candles, if you will. Usually a candle is used for the ceremonial lighting, and then the other nights it's switched over to just LED bulbs.
And where would we store it once the celebration is concluded?
So my understanding is it wouldn't be owned by the town because the town doesn't want to buy religious things, which I totally understand. I have a large carriage house that I don't use, which is right near downtown. I'm happy to store it. You know, if that's okay, that's certainly fine with us.
So the donations would go toward the purchase of the menorah. So who would actually own it? The
I imagine the synagogue would own it.
synagogue, okay.
If the town preferred owning it, which is my understanding, they probably don't want to, but if the town preferred it, I don't think there would be a problem donating it to the town.
Great.
I do know that the menorahs in Westboro and the one I'm familiar with in Worcester are owned by synagogues and used on public property, you know, in cooperation with the towns.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Hi, Mitch. Thanks for doing that work and reaching out to
Sure, Miriam.
synagogue. Great.
Any other questions?
I'm
Yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
Mitch. My only question is because the timing isn't the first day of Hanukkah. This is more. This would be. Is this I think almost the 8th day of Hanukkah? And
Yeah,
so again, it's nice that it ties in, but does it matter to your
Not at
community
all.
that it's on the 8th day?
Not at all. So the tree lighting is on the I believe it's the 7th night. So you'd be lighting 7 of the 8 main candles plus the helper candle that goes up into the center of it.
Yeah.
No night, not that I'm an expert on Judaism, but I've been doing this for 50 odd years. No night is any more important than any other night. And I've been to public celebrations of Hanukkah on every night imaginable. Usually it's just done on a convenient weekend night.
Okay. And would there be concern if we didn't light them all until that 7th night? So it would be Hanukkah and they would be dark, or would the expectation be to light them individually and then have the official
Yes.
ceremony on the 7th?
Yeah, you'd want to, the right thing to do is on the first night of Hanukkah, you light the first candle, first light, and you leave that on for a while. And then the second, you do the second one. It's possible, so, you know, a small number of people may gather around for the first one because it'll be kind of cool that it's the first one in Northborough. But I wouldn't anticipate there being a real event until the 7th night, because it would be wonderful to have, you know, a couple hundred people that come out for this thing. We go every year. And it's a great event. And the fact, I mean, it's sad that the trees got cut down, but the fact that there's room for a menorah now and having it be the first time, I think it's a great opportunity.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, Becca?
Mitch, thank you for bringing this up and for doing a lot of the heavy lifting. It's very much appreciated. I just want to sort of try to tie all this together. So one of the things that we've run into or bumped up against a lot as a committee is a question of resources, right? Like, we know that there are lots of different cultures represented in Northborough that celebrate lots of different religious events, cultural events, etc. But we have obviously a finite number of resources. Susie and her group obviously have lots of other things to do on top of planning these incredible events. So one of the things that we have sort of talked about and that we're hoping to tie into our recommendations, and this goes to what you were talking about, Susie, is recommending a formal town common use policy. So that would actually formalize a process by which residents, cultural groups, committees could come forward and request use of the common for a variety of events that they deem necessary or desire. And this is going to be helpful for our committee, I think, because as much as we want to sort of be this lightning rod for this work, we just don't have the ability to manage that many events. So we want to give residents and other groups the ability to, you know, if they want to plan an event and do all of the the fundraising or get the volunteers together to do it, that they have that ability to do so through this formal policy. So I did just want to say that, Susie. I know you talked a little bit about the town common use policy, and it is our plan. I'm hoping to recommend that policy as part of our overall recommendations to the board, so that moving forward, there's always this avenue, because as you know, the Judeo-Christian holidays are celebrated typically around the same time, but there are lots of other cultures that celebrate holidays throughout the calendar year. And so we want to give those groups the same opportunities to utilize public spaces to celebrate their events. So I just wanted to point that out. One of the other things we've talked about is just our not lack of knowledge. Well, yeah, I guess it is lack of knowledge. You know, like we're only eight people. We don't know about all the cultural events. So I do appreciate you coming forward, because this is great, because this is a good way for us to sort of educate ourselves and make sure that we know what is out there and what people want to do. My only concern, and I am 100% on board with having a menorah on the common. My only concern is that us as a group, the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, are there other people that were, or groups that we're not thinking about that we should be thinking about if we're going to have sort of a multicultural seasonal holiday celebration? And I just want to make sure that, you know, we've always done the tree lighting, and, you know, whether that's has a Christian connotation or not, a cultural significance or not. I just want to make sure that we're not leaving any groups or people out. And I want to make sure that it's well thought out, because I don't want it to ever appear like we're playing favorites or it's a game of favoritism. You know, the goal of this committee is to sort of take a really broad look at what's out there and how can we sort of cast the widest net to be the most inclusive community that we can. So I just wanted to bring that point up. I'm not sure how my other committee members feel about that. If they have thoughts about that. Is there a way to incorporate other cultures into something this year? Is it something that we should think about for future years? So that's.
Becca, I'm
Is
not sure
anybody
if
on-
we're addressing that at me or at the committee members.
Does anybody on the committee have any comments or additions to what Becca said? Lauren?
Yes, I think a lot of what Becca said were some of my thoughts as well. I feel like adding the menorah to the tree lighting ceremony would be a good first step in expanding the tree lighting ceremony to more people, more religions, especially because a lot of communities around here, Westboro, Shrewsbury, Worcester, already do have menorahs for the holiday season. So for that reason, I feel like it would almost be like a good stepping stone for then maybe next year. Okay, what other holiday can we include? So that's sort of one thought, is maybe take this step by step each year, adding a small piece so that it's not like all these holidays all at once and a little bit overwhelming. But then my other thought too is and maybe not predictable is the right word, but is it just cookie cutter, right? Of like, oh, well, we're going to do what every other community is doing, and we're going to, you know, celebrate Christmas and celebrate Hanukkah, but we're going to forget all the other holidays as well. So that's, you know, so I do agree with you on that, Becca, too. I don't want to be exclusive, because that goes against everything about what our community, our committee, I should say, is doing. So I think if we go about this with the intent of slowly adding to the tree lighting ceremony so that we are more inclusive, I would definitely be on board. Overall, though, yes, absolutely. I'm completely on board with adding the menorah. I guess the question is, when is appropriate? Is it this year, or do we wait until next year when we can flush this out a little bit more?
Yes, Deidre.
So I agree with you, Lauren, about, you know, that. And I guess the question that came up for me is, how much does the composition of what the actual members of the town celebrates come into this. Because, for example, during that same time of the year-ish is Kwanzaa, December 26th through January 1st. I don't personally celebrate Kwanzaa, and I don't know how many other people do. I'm aware of it. It has also a candle lighting element to it. Sometimes it's depicted very similar to a menorah. Because I don't personally celebrate it, I don't know how important it is for it to be included, because I celebrate Christmas and nothing really else. So yeah, I'm going to cut it off there and say how important is it to have a picture of what the town members really want.
Thank you. Miriam?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think something that would be effective would be, maybe this can be like a social media element, kind of reaching out to our community members and saying, we want to include you, we want to celebrate your cultures and what you're celebrating throughout the year. I mean, the holiday season is what we consider the holiday season is exclusive, because there are other holidays throughout the year. So I don't necessarily think that we need to add things during the holiday season, but making sure that throughout the year we're sort of having a moment for different cultures and religions. And I think that figuring out a way to reach out to our community and being like, hey, can you let us know, what do you celebrate? We'd love to include you, and sort of amplify that.
Yes, Susie.
So when I had initially raised my hand, this was something that our committee had already discussed. We had discussed using this as, we're including the menorah. Please contact us if there's something that you want celebrated and we want to be educated more. I will say we had considered Diwali. We are an 8-person committee, volunteer, and Lisa and I both are, we are momagers at home. But many of our committee members work, teachers, we have a restaurant manager. We just didn't have the bandwidth to get it done with our Halloween events. So we were hoping to use this as kind of a, what else can we help plan and to start off the year, which I was going to get into later about our plans for next year. But I just wanted to let you know, these are things that we did discuss, because Kwanzaa came up too. And we figured, well, this is December 4th, which falls during Hanukkah. Maybe somebody will respond to us and we can put something together. It might not be perfect, just like we were saying, the menorah lighting and everything, if we have it by the tree this year, but we'd ideally want it in the town common, just to start out small, because the timing of the lunar calendar seems to work this year. But we're open. And yes, Miriam, like you said, the social media, because we discussed, do we just put a call out for it now? And then we're people wouldn't know how we could utilize the information, where we could say we were approached about a menorah 3 years ago, although it seems like 5 because of COVID. I always want to add 2 years to everything, but it's been 3 years since we had kind of started this investigation with the Board of Selectmen, and it just kind of petered out because pandemic. So that's where the timeliness for us, because it falls during a convenient time where we will have the community gathered and could do a call out. And it is unfortunate that we couldn't start out with Diwali, but we did discuss it. So we really kind of tried to hash it out and just thought that this would be the best time. I think our behind the scenes discussions have been going on for a couple months now as well, up to today, not overall.
Yes, Lisa.
I'm sorry, I keep on raising my hand. I just don't want to interrupt. I think our main concern also is making sure that we're doing this the right way, having members of the community that we're trying to represent really approve of this. And so with this menorah, knowing that it's been going on for so many years and knowing that the community is supporting it and is approving the way that we're celebrating it, the fact that this is already, I don't want to say cut and dry, but this is a pretty easy way to execute this first one, not only timing wise, but just the fact that it's easy to fundraise, it will be available on time. And then knowing that this is just the first stepping stone in all of these additional ways. But again, if we're going to add something like Kwanzaa, we want to make sure that if we were to light whatever that, I don't know what the appropriate name is of it, but if we were to light those candles and we did it, during the tree lighting ceremony, unless we really talked to that community and really, took the time to do that sort of thing, are we insulting someone? Are we just kind of shoehorning it into that? But knowing that this is the first stepping stone and this is the appropriate way to do it, and then in the future, we can add on those things, taking the time to really talk to the community and getting something that will make everyone happy and feel included. Diwali, unfortunately, because it runs right today, and knowing how would we celebrate that? We really want to talk to those members who celebrate it and how would they appreciate us representing that within the town, whether it be on the common or where the tree lighting is or whatever. At this point in time, when we were talking about that, it would have been almost shoehorned in. And I don't even think that the thought would have been, it wouldn't have been represented the right way, if that makes sense. We want to make sure everyone's happy with this and that our purpose of representing everyone is correct and appreciated and not misrepresented. And so my biggest fear is that we excuse me, I don't want this to come out the wrong way. I think this could be a great way to be a stepping stone to the first way we celebrate, knowing that we will continually add on when it's appropriate and it's when the community can be represented in a way that's appreciative and appropriate for them. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. So I think in one aspect of this that I come back to is just the amount of time that we have between now and the tree lighting. I know in the real world, in the private world, the month is a pretty good amount of time, but in the municipal world, it's like not. The municipal world just takes a lot longer to get things through the process so that it's approved by people that are approved, and the people that need to be included in the decision are included in the decision. So adding additional communities to the event on the 4th, I think would be a challenge, both from a funding standpoint and from an approval standpoint. And then the other piece that I think of too with the tree lighting ceremony is does the Ellsworth family need to be included in any of this discussion, just because that event historically has been a memorial for Neil Ellsworth, and I don't want it to seem like the town is turning it into a religious day or a religious event when that was not the intention of the event at all. I know, there's an aspect to it that, with the tree lighting and everything else, that there is a Christmas feel to it, but it's really not a religious event. It's a memorial for Neil Ellsworth. So just to be aware of that and make sure that his memory and the other people that we honor that day is treated correctly. Yes, Susie.
I just want to say that for all of the changes that we've done to the day over the past, I want to say I've been on the committee for 7 years now, like including the trolley and the business and the children's chorus and everything. Like we've never consulted the Ellsworth family. We always ask them to come and be a part of it. And we do have the speech for him, but we normally just kind of plan everything from the cocoa to the cookies to the free pizza that's given out by Northborough House. We added a Toys for Tots option. We also added a food pantry donation at every table where we were giving out the cookies and the cocoa and the pizza. And I think our highest year, we raised almost $500 for the food pantry, just from people giving us, like wads of ones. And it's been turned into a great day for the Northborough local businesses as well. So.
Right. Mitch, can I ask your opinion on that? Like what, like, do you there's you're introducing the religious component. Do you agree with that? Do you have any opinion on that?
I mean, it's a Christmas tree lighting. So there is already a religious component to it. Members of the Christian religion may not see it that way. Members outside the Christian religion certainly do. It was suggested of turning the tree lighting into a multicultural event by introducing other religions into it. I can't speak for other religions. I would certainly think that the Jewish religion would not look favorably upon putting up a menorah when it happens to be the tree lighting time, just because it happens to be the tree lighting time. So I suspect other religions may have the same thought process. It happens to overlap this year of the scheduled tree lighting day anyway, and when Hanukkah happens to be, which is why it works great this year as a first year to do it. If in other years or even this year, if there happens to be another holiday that overlaps, great. Then if it's okay with those folks, do it at the same time. I think that's wonderful because more people will be together. But I think the key aspect is identify the other cultures and the other holidays and identify when to celebrate them and come up with the best day and the best way to do that. And there are, I think, a lot of avenues for doing that. For example, the library hosted a series of discussions a few years ago with local religious leaders. I think those were videotaped, so cable probably has copies of those. I know there's both Northborough and Westborough interreligious group of religious leaders that I'm sure we could contact that involves religions outside of Judeo-Christian religions. And so there's a lot of opportunity, and I would love it. I would love to see many cultures represented. One of the things I love about Northborough is how cultural it is and how diverse it is. And I think as a town, we should celebrate that every way we can.
Yeah, those are discussions that we've had as a committee, as putting together a calendar of events for 2022 and reaching out to the various communities to see what's the most appropriate way to properly celebrate or include them in events around town, and then also reach out to people to see if there's anything that we're missing. But thanks to your perspective on that it's a tree lighting ceremony. It is from the outside world. It's a Christmas tree, so that I appreciate that. Thank you. It's good to hear with that different.
And I don't frown upon it at all. We go every year.
Oh no, that's crystal clear that you're not saying that with any sort of jest. It's just fact. It is what it is. But I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. And on the idea of timeline, this happens to be falling into place pretty well. And I defer to the Community Affairs Committee for determining what the event can and should be. I think that's the reasonable thing to do. I appreciate their support for adding the menorah into it. And again, if there are other events that easily slide into it this year, great, then it should be done. But I think the town should get moving on planning, whether it be through community affairs or outside of that, as many cultural events as we can.
All right, great.
It'd be easier to plan. I just want to say that from planning many events back to back, I'm also PTO chair this year, so I will give that disclosure. From planning event to event to event to event in October, the fact that these two could be planned together this year is definitely a plus in our planning book. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can see that. I was just going to add a comment because I know it sounds like a lot, right? Because we want to try to include as many different groups as we can. And I completely support that. But I think we also want to think about different ways that we can make these events happen, right? Like people are not opposed to joining things virtually nowadays. Like that's an opportunity for us. The other piece of that is really seeing if we can maybe tack on to events or activities that these groups are already doing. Like people are already participating and celebrating their own ways. And if they're open to it, perhaps there's a way that there could be a joint partnership in something that's already being planned. And then it's not like there's this onus on the town or on our individual committees to create something that we may not have as much understanding of. And we can really just work with the group that's already planning something and see if there's a way that we can, kind of work together and maybe draw more people to the event if they're open to that kind of partnership. So I think those are different ways we can get at it rather than feeling like we have to learn about every single culture, which is part of this process, but then also feeling like we need to put something on all by ourselves, right? It's a huge lift. So I think it's another way of thinking about some of this work.
Yes,
That is
agreed.
great.
Thank you. Thank you, Shika. Becca?
Yeah, real quick. I know it's come up a couple of times, but the desire to reach out to other faith groups. I did learn that there is an interfaith group in Northborough, a group of different clergies that come together. I understand that there is somewhat of a tie to the municipal side. And so I think it would be a great idea. I know bringing in churches was something that the D&I committee had talked about early on, and it really honestly just didn't fit into the schedule. There's just too many other things that we had going on. But in thinking about planning for other celebrations, I think it would be wise of us to bring in that group to have a discussion about, what would you like? What do you think people would like to see? So I am going to put that on our calendar, committee members. So look forward to that. The other thing, and I just this might just be me personally. I just keep coming back to, I'm struggling a little bit because we had planned on making these as thorough as possible recommendations to the board. And I'm struggling with this, like, progress versus perfection, I guess is what it is. Like, I want progress and I know that the menorah is progress. I don't, like the fact that Diwali started today and we know that there's a large Indian population in Northborough and we just chose that's not the word I want to use, but we just didn't put the effort towards finding a way to celebrate that. But yet we are here talking about putting the menorah on the common. Again, I'm in favor of putting the menorah on the common. I just want to be careful about the way that our committee proceeds with recommendations. And I don't ever want people to feel like we are playing favorites to Judeo-Christian religions. They are the most commonly celebrated in America, Hanukkah and Christmas, at least popularity-wise. But we know that there are other celebrations that are happening. And there's one happening right now that just started today that we know a huge population in Northborough celebrates. And I'm not digging on anybody. I'm just taking, I'm thinking out loud. So it's something I'm struggling with. I'm in favor of the menorah, but if the committee is going to get behind it and show support for this happening this year, I just want us to be very thoughtful about making that recommendation and what that means and what it may look like to other cultures who we know are present in our community in large numbers. So that's all.
You make a
Thank
really,
you.
yeah, you make a really important point, and it's definitely something that's in my mind as well. So, yeah.
So just so that I'm clear, Becca, I'm tracking with you on what you're saying. I'm trying to think about, I mean, the ship has sailed on Diwali, right? So I'm trying to figure out what do we do now, right? Is it really refining some of what is in your draft of the recommendations to laser focus in on how we're going to ensure that we're inclusive of of all the cultures, within our recommendation? I think like that's probably where we stand now, in terms of being able to plan for the future. Is that what you're thinking, or is it saying, do we want to put our stamp of approval on the menorah as a committee, knowing that we missed the opportunity to do that with some of the other cultures in town? Like, is it an open question there, or is it more?
I think that's the question I'm asking to the committee.
Yeah.
Like, if we're gonna, and I know that in our hopefully very well put together, thoughtful recommendations that we're certainly going to have, that we hopefully will have laid out in a little bit more detail what the way that we would see those celebrations happening, or the ongoing partnerships that we see needing to happen in order to plan those celebrations. I think that's more realistic just because of timing for us. But the question for me is the D&I committee going to get behind endorsing a menorah on the common, knowing that we may be leaving behind other celebrations that we are all aware of that maybe just didn't come to fruition for any number of reasons, timing. They didn't have a lightning rod like Mitch, who has done all this great legwork for his community, which is a reason that you are here and we are considering this. So that matters, and your work is, like, we're grateful for that. But I just don't want to be leaving other people behind, or people saying, well, I didn't get the opportunity to do that because I didn't know, or I didn't hear, or so I'm just putting the question to the committee, I guess.
Question.
Yes, Mary.
So what other holidays, Diwali is not the only holiday, perhaps it's one of the more important for the Indian culture and religion, their faith, but are there other holidays coming up in the spring that we could incorporate into our plan? We have to start somewhere, right? We have to start, we're going to let whoever was behind our starting point is going to feel left out. But if within our plan, we have incorporated that in the next 12 months, this is our plan, we would like to incorporate as many as possible. We have to start somewhere. I love all the homework that Mitch has done to prepare for this. The fact that other communities are already doing it, I do feel a little bit behind, and spot on, Becca, progress versus perfection. Exactly. I mean, that's our greatest objective and fear. We want to make sure we're not missing anything and doing it the right way. But so is there something coming up in the spring that we can acknowledge their faith as well? Because it's not going to be a one and done only in December. We can celebrate throughout the year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I actually think that's part of a bigger conversation between the Diversity and Inclusion Committee and the Community Affairs Committee. My belief is, in order for us to be successful with these new events and a calendar, diversity and inclusion calendar for 2022, that we need to do and work very closely together as two committees. If we support each other, I think it will be much more effective and easier to get buy-in from the Board of Selectmen and the other officials or whomever we need to get support from. I think that's going to be really, really important. So to look at this in these events as strictly Community Affairs Committee or strictly Diversity and Inclusion Committee, I think is the wrong way
Right.
to do it. I think we need to, you know, put the calendar together. These are the things that we're going to do. How do we work together in order to execute these events so that they're the best that we can do, so that the people get, so that we meet expectations, which I think is really important. And, you know, Mitch, I know that when we had conversations, one of the questions I asked you was, you know, if we do this year, is it going to meet the expectations of the Jewish community? And you were very clear that it's a really simple thing, and just having it will go a long way, and very simple snacks and stuff. So it would meet expectations. So that's an important part of this. So I think when we think about not only this year with the menorah on Blake Street with the tree lighting, I think part of, if we were to recommend that and support that, the other piece to this is to let the rest of the town and the rest of the community know that this committee, in a partnership with the Community Affairs Committee, is going to do things next year that is inclusive of the entire community, of everybody possible. We will try to do something so that we are representative of everybody. So I think that's one way to balance it is, yes, we're doing this now, but the plan is to do something for everybody that we know of going forward in the future.
Oh, go ahead, Susie. I'll go after.
I had a thought too, like the flip side of what Becca had said too. If you don't recommend this, you're saying no to a plan that's been, I mean, we've been planning this for 3 years. And it's like, you don't want to be perceived as saying no to a menorah either. Because then when somebody else comes up with another idea next year, well, why did you say no to that? And I mean, my children have already had 2 days off of 2 Hanukkah holidays, I believe, Mitch, this year already.
Two Jewish holidays, so Rosh Hashanah and
Yeah.
Yom Kippur. Yeah.
So the school does follow it, and it is a public school, but I feel like this is an opportunity. I try to teach my children about many different cultures and everything, and this is an opportunity to say, remember when we talked about this holiday, this is another holiday. And as somebody, I would love all of these cultural events and these holidays, and I would love to be a part of planning them and working on the calendar with you. Because I think it would be great. You know, you want to teach your children, as a mom of 3, like, I want to teach them about the world. I want them to be able to travel. I want them to be able to talk to others and have an open mind and understanding. And I think that this would be a great point, because Lisa knows how stressed I get when my plans are not falling into place very well. And I feel confident in how this could roll out in a couple of weeks. And if someone did approach us about Kwanzaa, I feel like we might be able to put something together, thoughtful, small, maybe. But we do. I actually ran into the head of Northborough Cable too, and we were talking, Tim, about the live streaming of the tree lighting last year and all the stress about that. If you remember, live
Yes.
streaming from a phone, and we had to get through some. She's like, you doubled our subscribers in like 4 days. I'm like, I certainly did. Yes, I did. So like you were saying about Zooming and everything, we now have that power where even if we did something small for Kwanzaa, maybe not on a crowd scale, maybe we could do something small and have it broadcast on cable TV and YouTube. Like, we have that ability now, or Zoom where people could join in. So, you know, just kind of incorporating the ideas where you don't want to we don't always have to go big to start off, and then just let things evolve and work with other groups. And I love the idea of partnering with you guys, because it is, you know, it is the help and the creativity that kind of gets you going and makes these things a success too.
Yeah, I mean, the only, just a couple of things, like, as the diversity and inclusion committee, we have to consider everybody. So we're not going to be saying no to the having a menorah at the tree lighting event. There's other things that we need to consider. So it's just the wrong way to frame it, Susie. It's like we're just not. It's not.
I didn't mean that as offense. I just that's some of the things that have been said when it was found out that I would need a recommendation to go forward to the Board of Selectmen. So that's the comments that the feedback that I've received from some people in the community. So I just thought I would voice it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I
just
didn't
to
mean
be
it in an
clear,
offensive
I mean,
way,
I'm not.
but it's like the flip of what
Hold
she's
on,
saying though too. That's
one
what
second,
you know.
Susie, I just want to say, I was not trying to insinuate that the committee would not support putting a menorah on the common. I'm trying to think about timing, inclusivity, thinking about why we choose to celebrate publicly the things we do and why we choose to overlook others. And I just think that as a D&I committee, we need to think about those things, about why we're more receptive to having a menorah than we are to celebrating Diwali. And there's a reason for that. It's because those things are popular in America and they're ingrained in our culture. That's why. It has nothing to do with you or me or Mitch personally. It's just about the world that we grow up in. And this committee is doing a lot of work to try to see past those things and find ways to bring in people who are typically on the fringe and don't see themselves represented in the day-to-day, on TV, on public events on the common. And so I wasn't insinuating that we would not support a menorah. This committee needs to think critically about when we put our voice behind something, what does it look like to the community? And what does it look like to the people who are typically on the outside? Because our goal is to bring those people in. So I want to make that perfectly clear.
I did have a question about the recommendation too. Is this the overall recommendation? Are you guys still in the study phase for the overall recommendation for the town? Or is this just for this event? Like, I wasn't sure the timeline, like when that report was going to be going to the town, or if the recommendation was just for us for this event.
We're not due to make our recommendations until the end of the calendar year. So probably at the very beginning of 2022, we'll go to the board with a set of formalized recommendations. So this conversation is kind of happening like separately on the side. I know because of the timing, and I understand that the timing works really well because Hanukkah and the tree lighting line up. And I want to be open to that, but it is,
see, I was led to believe that it was going to be done by these 2 weeks from Monday.
No, we're
yeah, there. I think I was communicated to a little differently. But
I think we're scheduled to go before the board in January. Right now is when we'll be giving our final recommendations.
So is there going to be a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen for this event now, or?
I think the board would.
It's not against you. I'm just really confused. I've been communicating with the Board of Selectmen chair. Now I'm like very confused about the timeline.
I think the board would feel more comfortable if the Diversity and Inclusion Committee was in support of moving forward with the idea of having a menorah at the tree line.
Okay.
So I just wanted to publicly say, Becca, thank you for pushing us to think beyond, just where this conversation started. And as we've started to get more and more of that feedback and this dialogue, it's necessary. So thank you. What I was going to say was, I personally am, I think everybody is, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think we're all saying yes, like, let's move forward with what we've talked about with regard to the menorah. I feel comfortable and proud to have the D&I committee's name behind that. I think we also separately need to talk about, you know, almost the PR component of this, right? Because I think that's what we're all kind of alluding to. Like, what does this mean when we say yes here, but perception, right? The perception is that we haven't talked about any other holiday or any other culture. And so I think that's something that we can try to figure out as a team. But in the short term, like, I think that this is something that is necessary and we need to move forward with. It's probably another opportunity for us to have an open listening session, perhaps, with our community, maybe not before the close of the year because things are getting crazy with timing and such, and we're trying to be laser focused on our recommendation, but that can be part of what we communicate out. You know, we want to hear from you all. Like, let's maybe have a listening session or some other means for people to give us feedback, because if we put together a calendar based on what we know or what we can Google really quick, we're going to miss stuff. So I think we need to start to get that feedback direct from folks in the community. But in terms of this immediate ask, I personally am voting yes. Like, I think we should do this. This is a good first step, and we need to talk about what we communicate out to our community, knowing that we don't want to leave anybody behind in this effort to move forward as an inclusive group of people.
Thank you, Sheikah. And I tend to, I lean towards agreeing with you on that. I do think, you know, Becca, I think the process versus perfection is where we're at. And I think perfect, my personal opinion is perfect doesn't exist. So I think this is probably as close to perfect as you're going to get between all the different variables lining up in the right way. Anybody else have any other opinions on that? Mary.
So two things. I apologize because at the beginning of our session together, I didn't realize that you were already planning to move forward with this. So I apologize, Mitch, for asking specific questions about the menorah and the height and who's the Mistora and who's doing what. So forgive me for that. I misunderstood.
No apology necessary.
I misunderstood where this was, where you had the amount of planning that's gone into it. And I concur. I am completely on board. As I said earlier, I think we should absolutely move forward with this. I support you 100%.
Anybody else? Mitch.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I appreciate the comments and the feedback from members of both committees. One, about rolling this out to additional cultures. People will notice that there is something additional there at the tree lighting, the menorah. It will be spoken about. It's also an opportunity for whoever wants to take the lead on it to say, this isn't just the second event that we're celebrating. This is the second of, we hope to be many. And I can't speak on behalf of either of your committees. That's just a great opportunity. You're gonna have a couple hundred interested people there. Plus it'll be on cable and everything else. That's the perfect opportunity to say to the community as a whole, talk to us about your cultures. Let us know what the events are and start to build that into the town's annual calendar as the events come up. And hopefully by the time we get to this time next year, there aren't just two. I mean, there'll be whenever they happen to be on the calendar, but there will be many. Many that we've talked about, that you've talked about tonight, and some we've never even heard of because we've just never heard of them. The other piece I wanted to make sure of is that we are talking about menorah lighting simultaneous with the tree lighting. That is sort of one event that encompasses them both. For that to happen, the menorah would have to have a place to live for the 8 nights of Hanukkah. So my anticipation, it would just be in that same spot for all 8 nights. There wouldn't be any large event on any of the other nights, but it would just need to be there and have an electrical outlet. So I'm happy to work with the DPW or whoever wants to take the lead from the town and just sort of finding the best exact spot for it and where to plug it in.
Okay,
We'll arrange those details, Mitch, with the DPW.
Fantastic. Thanks, Becca.
all right. And I think the only other ask I would have, Susie, is if you guys do hear from other communities in town, if you could just keep us in the loop and let us know. So that way, if we can, if we need to plan something additional, that we're all on the same page, that would be great. Yeah.
And I just want to say, because I didn't realize, like I said, I didn't know where you were in your timeline. And from what I heard from the board, was a little misled about certain things. Maybe not misled. I could have misunderstood too. But we're already a working committee, and that's what we do is plan. So I can also reach out to Tim to send out an invite if we're working on a certain event or we're going to be talking about something. I'd love for you, we meet in person now at the town hall, but I would love for some of you to come join us, or all of you, you know what I mean? Because I realize that you guys have other things that you're also trying to accomplish. Tim and I were trying to figure out over the summer when, maybe in September, maybe in October, when we could join up again, because we so enjoyed the meeting. But we are still meeting every month and planning, and we'd love to have the input. And I would, so if I keep you in the loop, Tim, like if I say I did hear from this, do a couple of you guys want to come to our meeting? I would love that, because
Yeah, that'd
then,
be great.
you know what I mean? You have these other
Yeah.
discussions going on here, and we're still planning the events. So even, and I don't know, I'm pretty sure with public meeting law, and Mitch is like my encyclopedia for this, that as long as we had the agenda and a space to meet and met the public notice laws, we might even be able to set up an extra meeting where it's just like a working meeting of diversity, and you know what I mean, or an extra community affairs meeting where you guys could come. Because when we get to the next part of our calendar, we are looking for help from a lot of groups, and like you said, planning with other groups and kind of doing things that we all wanted to do, but we're going to do it together. So when we get to that in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, that would be great.
Just one
Yeah.
last thing, Susie, on that, one of our recommendations is going to be that the BOS make the DNI committee a permanent advisory committee of the Board of Selectmen. And so part of our recommendations is going to be allowing DNI to develop ongoing partnerships with several different committees in town. And one of the big ones is the CAC, because you guys do so much work around events in town. And a lot of what our recommendations are focused on are creating public events that are inclusive in their nature. And so I think, I don't know if there's a standing meeting, but I think that if the board does take our recommendations, I would expect that our committees would hopefully work pretty closely together in the future. At least that's my goal when I envision the next year or so.
Yeah, I've told Tim every time, if you need recommendations to become a permanent fixture, I would write a letter. I'm like, I will start a letter writing campaign that you guys are a permanent fixture in town. I think everything that comes out of this group is positive, and we loved, like Pam and I were ready to invite you all to our next meeting after our last meeting. We wanted you to all come back with us and help. So yes, that would be great.
Okay. Susie, was there anything else? Mitch, if Susie, was there anything else that you wanted to discuss? And at the same time, Mitch, you're welcome to hang out if you want.
I'd be delighted to hang out, but I'll turn my camera and microphone off unless so warranted otherwise. Thank you.
One thing that we had discussed during the pandemic starting, and then it was just kind of tough, was a kindness week. And then we were thinking a weekend in February, similar kind of to what Westboro did. So the weekdays would be a little lighter with events, like maybe pick up a craft or have a nighttime speaker at the library, like stuff like that. As I said, I'm also PTO chair, so I attend the Superintendent Advisory Committee meetings monthly, and spoke about it there. And NSPAC. They're gonna try to find me, so I apologize if I have little ones coming in. But NSPAC wants to work with us, the PTOs, and Greg Martineau has pledged his support in that he wants to be involved as well. So really creating a Northborough, Southborough kindness week, and talking to different groups and who wants to be involved. And, you know, we were even envisioning like, one of my friends had brought up, Miriam, I think you were on a call one time about a cultural fair, you know, like either in town hall or at Trinity Church or something, you know, different events the weekend. So we would love your help in planning that because it's never been done here. And, you know, but we have a lot of people that are very interested. And even if the library had like, we were even thinking like pick up a rock to paint on this snowy day or, you know, different things like that. So would love to know your thoughts on that, or if it's something that you'd like to research, you know, and email me ideas or examples from other towns or communities. So that's our next big push. We're going to do the light up the town contest for the houses, but that, I mean, that's really, that'll
Okay.
be it through
Yeah,
February.
and
So
if you guys are gonna have a planning meeting about that and want to extend an invitation to us, that might be a good opportunity to have a joint meeting to share ideas on that.
yes, I think we would probably start it maybe in mid-December, maybe we would probably have to start it in mid-December. So it'll be the third Wednesday in December. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, once you have
Calendar
it,
on the wall
just
says
let us
October
know.
right now. So yes, I'll be in touch because we would love to work with you guys on that. And I had spoken to the cultural council as well. Everybody just seems to be on board. So if you guys have any ideas or things that we can offer to the town, a lot of the times these groups work better when you say, oh, you could do this or this or this too. Like it'll either get them thinking or they'll, you know, use that too.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds great. And like I said, just let us know and you know, we can all put our heads together and I'm sure we'll come up with something that would be pretty neat. So. All right. Well, thank you
And-
very much.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, and any ideas on how you would want to use it, or if you want me to share anything, if you guys come up with a graphic or a flyer after the December 4th event, like let me know. We have the people that we, you know, work with and advertise with and sharing on social media and our website. So
Okay. All right, great.
thank you.
All right, perfect. I just want to say, listen, I think between our committee and your committee, we can accomplish some really great things for the community. I'm really excited and really look forward to working with everybody. And I think it's going to make a big difference, and I look forward to it. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, and we all look forward to doing some important work next year. So thank you.
Yes. So maybe I'll see you at the December meeting.
Yes.
It is in town hall and it's very dark and creepy. So I'm just warning you. It's like I have to unlock the building. So just be prepared on that. But nobody warned me. So
yeah.
And then I talked to Tim and he's like, oh yeah, it is pretty creepy in there at night. I'm like, you didn't tell me. Nobody told me.
Well, thank you, Susie. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch. It was good seeing you all.
Thanks
Thank
so
you,
much, you
everyone.
guys. I
Susie,
really
thank you,
appreciate being
Lisa.
listed here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye, Mitch.
My last comment, I don't know, Tim, if you want your board to take a vote on the menorah for this year, or if it's a consensus agreement, however you normally take those things.
Becca,
I think we have consensus.
Yeah.
So we'll convey that to the board. Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Becca. I appreciate that.
course.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Susie. Thanks, everybody. Good seeing y'all. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you, Mitch.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. So next on the agenda is discussion on the charge and scope for the committee for next, to include in the recommendations. Becca, did everybody have a chance to read it? That way, so Becca, you don't have to go through word by word. Did anybody have any specific questions about it?
I just had a quick question about if everybody's comfortable with the way it's laid out, what the next steps were to populate some of the sections. Like I know, Becca, I saw some comments in there around, pulling in more data or even just being able to flesh out some of the ideas. Is the thought that we'll kind of split that out and folks will take those pieces or sections and work on them? I just wanted to kind of get an idea of, how we can support to make that document complete.
Chica, right now, save that question for when we get to the outline for the recommendations. This is for the scope and charge.
Oh, the scope. Sorry, I skipped
That's
ahead.
okay.
So I had a couple of questions on the document. First off, thank you so much, Becca, for putting that together. I thought it was really well written and is a great start. I actually didn't have anything I wanted to change per se. I just wanted to know whether it's sufficient to state the duties below, or should the purpose also allude to them in some way. I say that because the part about like maybe helping to increase diversity isn't really included in the beginning, and I don't know if that's something to consider bringing in more at the purpose stage, or I guess, what am I trying to say? To have more of the duties be more explicitly represented in the purpose. So I guess maybe I don't fully know what the purpose of the purpose section is. Is it just to kind of tee up the context and more of the overall vision of the town and then get into the specifics later? Or is it like a preview of the specifics?
Yeah, so the purpose to me is kind of like a preamble almost. And then the duties are what is the meat of the scope. So like what are the actual tasks and things that we are to undertake as a committee? The purpose is sort of what you said, but just like teeing it up and just providing some context and sort of a background for our committee. Like, why are we here? And why do we think it's important for us to be here? And then once we've set that stage, okay, well, these are the things that we want to do to improve or to like back up or support our purpose. Does that?
Yes.
And it's not, go ahead.
The second question I had is, should we be stating also explicitly what the committee is not? Like what's not in our purview?
So the way that scopes are typically interpreted very exactly. So if something is not explicitly stated in a scope, it is determined that it is not in that committee's scope. That's sort of always been my experience, because otherwise you end up with committees that are just overreaching constantly because they feel moved by something particular, and we want to stay away from that. So, one of the reasons I really wanted us to have time to look through this is do we feel like the duties are comprehensive enough for what we are actually trying to accomplish? You know, I only came up with 4, you know, are there others that I'm missing?
Is there a process by which in the future this might be amended because the scope has changed?
Yes, the board of selectmen can change the scope of any of the advisory committees at any time.
I mean, I had another question, but I'll go ahead and give the floor to Lauren for a little bit.
Thanks, Deirdre. I wanted to focus on, let's see, I'm trying to open the document. Where is it? The people who are going to be composed of the D&I committee that you had recommended, Becca. And I know Deirdre, Miriam, and we had a conversation. This sounds like ages ago. It was nice weather, so whenever that was. So I'm a little confused at the wording. So I think that maybe we could clean up the wording a little bit. It discusses the committee shall consist of 7 voting members, and that 2 of those members would be a school committee member as well as council on aging, but then doesn't say what the other 5 voting members would be. And then it talks about non-voting. So Becca, could you actually just flesh that out a little bit more for me?
Yeah, so the way I had, and again, this can change. This is just me, and I'm open. You know, I actually cut the committee. We were originally a committee of 9. I'm recommending a committee of 7. I'm open to 9. I'm not married to any of this. But I had thought that 7 voting members, membership shall include a representative. So the membership has to include, I'm reading this now, I can see why you're confused. It has to include a school committee member, a member of the council on aging, and then that was it. It looks like those are the only 2 things specified. I'm not sure why I did that, but.
And then are you saying that the other 5 voting members could be sort of up for grabs for any other community member?
At large, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah. And we should actually specify that. Now that I'm reading this, we should say the remaining 5 members shall be determined by the board and will be at-large members of the community. But I'm also open to having more specific roles. If there are other groups that we feel like we definitely want to have a voice on this committee, we can include those as representative members as well. So I'm open to anything.
Thank you. I think that does clarify. Could we also speak about
Lauren?
the purpose of non-voting members? And yes, Tim.
So I just before you moved on, I just had one on the same topic, the composition of the committee. When I wrote the scope and charge for this committee initially, one of, like Becca, I think somebody from the town administration office should be on the committee. I think like either you or John.
As a voting member?
That's in here, right?
Yeah. At the top line says the town administrator or designee shall serve as an ex officio non-voting member of the committee. So are you proposing to add them as a voting member?
Yes.
Okay.
I think for the sake of simplicity, just to have voting members, because if you have just for me personally, I'm just thinking about the person that's going to be the chair for the committee going forward and running the meetings. Like you're going to have voting, non-voting. It just from simplicity standpoint, just having everybody who's on the committee be voting. So whether that's 7 members or 9 members, like I don't know if 7's enough. 9, I think, I don't know what everybody else's opinion, but we've had 9 and I think it's worked well for us over the last year or so. But I also think too, that when I put the committee together, one of the seats, one of the 9 seats was for the Board of Selectmen. And I actually don't think we need a seat for the Board of Selectmen, because what the Board of Selectmen can do is just assign somebody from the Board of Selectmen as a liaison to the committee, and they're a non-voting participant on the committee, but then they can join the meetings and participate as they see fit. But by removing the Board of Selectmen seat, that opens it up for another at-large seat.
I have a question. Quick question.
Yeah.
What do other town committees do? Do they have voting and non-voting members on their diversity committees?
It's all over the map.
Yeah.
It really depends, and I don't like that answer, but it just depends community to community. I tried to mirror. There are a few communities that. So the reason for the non-voting membership is there are some communities that have a number of town staff as non-voting members who attend meetings to provide information, particularly public safety staff, communities that have youth and family services departments, and they're really there for informational purposes. Now, for us, it hasn't really come up because we've brought those people in and they've come in as needed. But if, like, for example, I imagine when we're getting into the strategic planning piece of this and we're working with a consultant and we're working on, policies that are going to impact staff, particularly public safety, you're going to want a public safety representative at your meetings to be providing regular input during that process, because it's going to make it easy. Then you're not going to be going back and forth constantly. That was sort of some of the reasoning behind the non-voting members. It doesn't have to be set up that way. It's just it's the way I've seen it in some other communities.
I feel like the value that Lauren and Deidre have been able to share with their participation on the school committee level has been valuable. So my question is, why did you decide to go with the Council on Aging versus the schools?
So Deirdre is on the Coalition for Equity.
Which is part of the school committee, isn't it?
No.
Oh, it's not? Oh, I thought it was part of the schools.
It's part of the schools, yes.
Okay, so part of the schools, not necessarily on the school committee, but you're on the Coalition of Equity that works with, I don't know what exactly the connection is, but I guess my point is, I think that's been very valuable to have somebody here speaking on behalf of the schools and the progress you guys have made, because I've always felt that there's a significance to knowing what's going on in the schools, so we're not redundant in our efforts. And I don't see as much of a significance on the Council on Aging, but that's just, I might be missing something.
I like that. I completely understand, Mary, and I agree too. And Deirdre, perhaps you agree. I think, sitting here in these meetings and also the coalition meetings and seeing the overlap has been really helpful for big picture planning. I like, Becca, that you included the non-voting member shall include a school administration representative, because one thing that maybe many of you don't know is that there are many administrators who serve on the Coalition for Equity. So the director of operations, the assistant superintendent, there's a lot. So I think there's probably about 4 administrators who sit on that coalition. So because they sit on the coalition, I think they would be a great resource, not to vote, because they may not be Northborough residents, but to bring that information into the meetings, just like you're saying, Mary. Does that make that a little bit clearer?
It does, but if they're not residents of Northborough, does that add value? The value we need?
I think so, because they are sitting in on these meetings for the Coalition for Equity, and essentially doing the work for the community from the school level. So I think so. Deirdre, I don't know, what's your perspective about having a school administrator serve as a non-voting member, even if they don't reside here?
So I think it would be good, especially since they're doing a lot of town surveys, like, they're not the whole town, but at least the community of people who have school-age children, and tapping into that body of knowledge, I think would be really great. As well, I think something I keep hearing is this like collaborative events. So being able to have a member that crosses community committees to make those events happen, I think would be a really good asset. And then we wouldn't reinvent the wheel. So they're already doing an equity audit, have hired a company to do that, and vetted several companies beforehand. So we would be able to leverage. We can still do those things, but it's nice, I think, if that was like it could come up more organically.
Yeah, I agree. And Beck, I completely changed my mind on the non-voting. I didn't quite understand. I didn't quite understand, but after you explained it, it makes all the sense in the world to have those non-voting members. When you put it as having people that come from the town,
Yeah,
that are just there to provide. It's not like it's residents at large that come in and just sit in on the meetings. It's actually people that can add value to the meetings. They just don't vote on. I'm thinking like Kathy Jubert at the planning board.
right.
So
Somebody
in
that
terms,
brings expertise to the meeting and provides information. So that
And
makes all this.
to be clear, they won't be considered full members of the committee. So they won't be considered in a quorum. So they don't have to be at every meeting. You won't
Right.
need them at every meeting to have a meeting. They're there for informational purposes to help the committee move the goals forward. That's really the purpose.
Yes. Perfect.
so I think for clarity purposes, the only thing that maybe needs to be added in that second sentence in the second paragraph is the K-8 school committee, the council on aging, and then 5 what is it called? Community members at large or something like that. And then I think it will be a little bit clearer.
Yeah, thank you. Do we want to move? Do we want to go to 9? I mean, Tim, I know you felt like 9 was a good number. I mean, that would just mean that you'd have 7 at-large members as opposed to 5. And that's
Well,
what was another that we wanted to include.
I think going to 9 would make sense if we were going to invite other committees to have permanent members on the diversity. Like we have a K-8 school committee member, we have a council on aging member. Is there another committee or two that we want to extend an invitation to have a permanent seat on the committee, like a voting seat on the committee? If not, then I think having 5 at large is the right number. It's just a matter of if we want to include any other committees from the community, from the town with the voting seat or not. But since we have the non-voting seats, do we need to have those people as members, as voting members?
Well, what about somebody from the people we were just meeting with? It sounded like we would be doing a lot of work with them.
Yeah, a representative from the
Council, community affairs.
Right.
They're already so busy. I can't imagine they would be able to even embrace another committee seat, to be honest. But collaborating with them is fantastic.
Do you know what the membership is of the CAC and whether the Board of Selectmen could increase their number by 1 member for this very purpose?
I don't know how many members they have.
Becca, are you looking it up? Were you looking it up? No.
Yeah,
I
they're
can look it up.
they're a 9-member committee.
Okay.
Yeah. So they probably won't want to increase. First of all, you don't have an even number. But if the committee wanted to consider that, I would have a conversation with Susie and see how she felt about that, whether or not she thought that one of her members could take that on, or if it would be too burdensome and she would rather just have, like regular joint meetings, or something like that. But we can ask.
And they could also have non-voting membership if you wanted to increase that to 6. Because it sounded like, Becca, you said, when appropriate, those non-voting members, because they don't count towards a quorum, would then attend. So if the D&I committee were meeting and we did not need the community affairs there, they wouldn't need to attend the meeting. So that could be an option as well.
Or they could just be one of the 5.
The at-large, you mean?
No, one of the 5 non-voting.
Yeah, we would have to just cut the youth representatives down. I mean, because the non-voting consists of a school admin, a public safety, a family and youth services rep, and then 2 youth reps. That's 5. So, but you could reduce the youth rep down to 1 and add a community affairs committee rep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else have any other comments or questions on it? Becca, you did a great job. It came out really well.
Very well done.
Is there anything in this, and I'm not seeing it, but it probably is there, about how these members would be selected, like the community members at large, what that process would look like, or would that fall under the Board of Selectmen? So we don't need to include that.
Yeah, so that's based on the board's selection process for the committee, but I did put a paragraph in here about the board should endeavor to ensure that members represent historically marginalized communities, have relevant experience in human rights and equity, community engagement, etc. We want to make sure that there's a diverse showing. That's probably first and foremost the most important.
Yeah.
I have a question about this sentence. The initial terms of the members shall be staggered. Can you explain how that works, especially like when you're just starting out?
Yeah, so it's a little odd when you're first starting out because everybody's starting at the same time. And that's really the only time in the history of a committee that everybody is starting at the same time, because you don't ever want a committee to fully turn over all at once, because then you lose a lot of your momentum. So what would happen is at first, some people would have 3-year terms, some would have 2-year terms, some would have 1-year terms. And so the board is going to have to make a decision about which people get 1-year terms and which people get 3-year terms. And then as the reappointment happens, those terms they'll change, because some will come up every 3 years, some will come up every 1 year. And in theory, you wouldn't always have the same term. Does that make sense?
Yes, thanks for explaining that.
Okay.
I just wanted to add that I don't know if somebody mentioned this, but I do think we should expand it to 9 voting members, and then add somebody from the Coalition for Equity. I think that would be a good idea.
Was that a requirement of the original committee, Tim? No.
No.
So you just happened to be on the Coalition for Equity when you applied to be on this committee?
Right, the actual application processes sees overlapped a little bit, so
Okay.
they started around the same time.
Okay. And I should know the answer to this, is the Coalition for Equity a regional or is it a K through 8?
Regional.
K through
Regional,
12, yep, regional.
K through 12, okay.
And there are also student members of that, so I don't know if that person can serve dual purpose, be both a coalition member and a youth member, or would they be definitely separate? Like if you're a youth, but you're representing the coalition, you're that, and then the youth on the committee are
Well,
separate.
if you're the coalition's representative, you are a voting member. So that's different because the youth representatives are not voting members. I would say we'd probably want to also have the other youth rep just to have as much, youth input as we can.
Right.
But the coalition, if it's going to be one of the voting members, that's a unique position because you have a voting power.
Okay.
What are the rules on youth reps? Are they allowed to be voting members? And what do we consider a youth rep?
I think they have to be registered to vote in Northborough. So you have to be of age.
Okay.
Yes.
Um,
To be a voting member, not to be a youth non-voting member. To be a non-voting
Okay.
member, I don't think we would, we could put parameters on it, but I don't think we really need to, as long as they could engage in the discussion. That would kind of be up to the Board of Selectmen through their selection process. But the voting member does have to be a registered voter of the town.
okay. I think if we add a member from the Council on Aging, then we should have a voting youth rep. If that makes sense.
Okay.
But Becca, if I'm hearing you correctly, in order to be a voting member on the committee, you have to be old enough to vote.
Yeah. So I'm not sure.
So you have to be over 18.
Yeah. So I don't know
Right.
how there would be a youth rep and
That's what I'm
also
saying.
a
So-
voting member.
That's what I'm saying. So what is considered a youth rep? Okay. I feel like I understand what you're saying. Okay.
I would say under 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. Got
Okay.
it.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I guess I just have one more comment. So having a representative from the school committee as a voting member, potentially the coalition, and then a non-voting member as the school administration, I feel like that is swayed very heavily on schools. And I remember during our conversations this past year, we really have discussed quite a bit that we want, to be more than just the schools. And that's 3 members of the committee focused on schools right there. So is that unbalanced? I don't know. And then also, the school admin, basically all the school administrators, or at least the main ones, the superintendent, assistant superintendents, both of them, as well as the director for language and equity, I believe is her title. They all serve on the coalition. So there would be a lot of overlap. There would be a lot of shared knowledge. Maybe 3 of the members would then have knowledge about the coalition. So I guess that's all I wanted to say is, we've talked a lot about we don't want to just focus on the schools. And so that would be 3 members.
But I think they all serve in different capacities. Or they represent different aspects of the education part of the town. It is a big part of the community, so I don't think it's unreasonable to have 3 members from the schools on the committee. And sometimes I feel too that the schools are ahead, or they're leading this charge much more than any other aspect of society. I guess, you know, they're leading the charge. So I think it would be good to have that element on this committee going forward.
As I'm thinking and we're talking about this, I know I've talked ad nauseum about the separation between the school committee and the board of selectmen, and that the school committee is the governing body of the schools, and the board of selectmen is the governing body for like everything else. This is an advisory committee to the board of selectmen. So I'm just trying to think through, like, I know that there's added value for having school representation, because we've talked a lot about having partnerships, using bringing the Lyceum back, you know, partnering on future initiatives, a communication plan. To Lauren's point, I don't want to sway too heavily towards the schools, because the board of selectmen has no jurisdiction. So I do want them there certainly for informational purposes and to continue the communication. But I think Lauren might have a point about, you know, other groups that we should be thinking of aside from the school that we don't typically hear from, that should have a seat, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, and to that point, Becca, I mean, I am the school committee representative, and I hate to say this, but I agree with Deirdre. I think there's more need to have a coalition member on this committee instead of the school committee representative. And that would mean that I would be gone. No, no, I'm on the coalition too. But but I do feel like, you know, in my time almost this year, I feel like I've been putting on my coalition hat much more than my school committee hat. And so just the fact that I'm a school committee member on the coalition, it's more the fact that I'm a coalition member who happens to be on the school committee. I feel like that value is so much more than being a school committee member. Because again, school committee member is all about, you know, policy, managing the superintendent and budgets.
Yeah.
So, you know, during those discussions where we need to talk about policy or budget, sure, bring in a school committee member. But I really think, like Deirdre said, the coalition member is going to be more important than school committee.
And I really don't think, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Mary. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Okay. Go ahead, Becca.
I was just going to ask, then, are we in favor of removing the K-8 school committee member and replacing that with a school coalition for equity member?
Is the school coalition for equity member cover 12 through 8? I know you said it's regional, but is it down to the kindergarten level? It is,
Yes,
okay.
It involves administrators, teachers, parents, community members.
So the only caveat would have to be that it would have to be a Northborough resident. You must also have Southborough residents on the coalition. Okay,
correct.
So we just have to specify that.
Yes.
And I emphasize the kids too, because of the people that spoke up at our listening session, several were speaking on behalf of their children. And it's where it starts. And there's such an emphasis on bullying, and it needs to stop. And forgive me for saying I didn't see as much value on the Council on Aging, but I just feel that we just can't get enough, you know, presence at the K through 12 level. It's so important to me. I don't have kids that young anymore, but it's just very important. It's heartbreaking to hear those stories.
Yes, I agree. So replace the K through 8 committee member with a coalition member.
Where are we on membership? 7, 9?
Does it hurt to have 9?
No.
No. The only other thing I can think of, and I don't know what the most effective way to do it is, if there was some way to get the disability community someone representing that community, but I don't know how you go about doing that. That's just if because there isn't like a council on aging for that group of people. So the only way that you're going to get somebody is if they go through the at-large process. But
Yeah, we do not have a commission on disability in Northborough, so we don't have a committee that's exclusively working on issues for folks who have disabilities. You know,
Can we specify that when the committee is being charged, that they actually, I know you've put in there, people from marginalized groups, but that intentionally be broadly representative? Because I think that it's important that the committee has the blind spots covered as much as possible. So
what do you think we should call? I mean, do we think we should call it out specifically in that section?
Well, I don't want to be restrictive either.
Yeah.
What I say that because, it's going to be an application process. And if someone with the X identity doesn't apply, then they can't have that person. And now it's like, well, we didn't get this, but some way to say that there will be attention paid to how broad. And that might mean that there has to be some way to find that out. And I don't know if that's against the law here to, ask somebody to disclose, but sometimes it's difficult to even know if how much representation you have in the application pool. So
I mean, I think the goal for the board would be to try to tease that out in the interview process, like, why are you interested in this? What brings you to the D&I committee? And hopefully if someone is a strong advocate for disability issues, that would be what came out. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are also disabled. And I think that's what you're getting to. And I don't really know a way around that without, because we don't have a commission on disability, which requires, actually, I don't even think that committee requires that you have a disability to be on it. So I'm not sure how to get around that.
If there's just something in the section on making sure that the committee is diverse, it could just be a sentence that diversity includes, and you can list out, diversity includes gender, sexual preference, disability, just to make sure, because maybe the Board of Selectmen doesn't know what those things are. So if those are just in there as a guide. Not necessarily saying that we need somebody from one of these, from a specific community needs to be on, but you need to consider all of these backgrounds when selecting members.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I just don't know how to convey that in words to the scope. You know what I mean? Like, I get what you're saying, but I always think of the statement like, will not be discriminated on the basis of A,
yes.
B, C. That's how it's typically, but how do you say, I might just be late and I might just be drawing a blank, but if you think of a way to say that, or you come up with it, just shoot me an email with the sentence and I'll put it right in there.
Okay. All right. That's fair enough.
Maybe where you say, to that end, the Board of Selectmen shall strongly endeavor to ensure that its members represent, and then you say historically marginalized communities, maybe adding a couple words there where you say including but not limited to,
Oh,
like language like that.
okay. Yeah, I'll try that.
Nice job, Marion.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you.
All right, any other comments on this, on the scope? Okay. Next is a review of the draft outline of the final recommendations. Becca, how deep did you want to go into this?
Okay, because it's already 9 o'clock, I don't want to go into it deep at all tonight, but I do. So the thing I wanted to talk about tonight is this the layout? And is this the way that we imagine presenting our ideas? The way that I've laid it out and the way that I've sort of put it into sections? That's sort of the first hurdle I want to cross. And then I want to get into who's going to supply the information in all the different sections and how we're going to put it together. But the first thing is, does this lay out the way that we all imagined that it would?
For me, yes.
Okay.
Like we've talked about, like from the beginning, sort of splitting it up into those 4 or 5 categories. And I think, yeah, you did that here. Like in my mind, I imagine like training and staffing, community engagement, public safety, education, but we're not talking about education here because that's not the scope of the Board of Selectmen. So that's what I envision in my mind. Most of them are covered here.
I agree. This looks great. Thanks, Becca.
Yeah, I love the format.
Yeah, it's very clear and easy to find. Like if you're just kind of, I mean, of course, they're going to read this in from cover to cover, but if you were skimming to try to find something, it's very well laid out and easy to navigate.
I think there's just one section, and I think it was the community engagement section. There's the blue box with the recommendations, but then throughout the discussion, there's also recommendations. So I think maybe just keeping it like the other sections. Does that make sense, Becca?
Yeah, I think I did add stuff later into that section, which is why I ended up in the white, but I understand, because I actually use the language we recommend in there. So those are the pieces to move to the blue.
Right.
Okay. I should also say that this is just the outline. My plan is to draft like a paper, basically, so that there's a plan that the board can have and refer to. This is sort of just for us, or for me, to sort of get my thoughts down in the way that I wanted to organize it. I'm planning to dive deeper into all this, and my hope is that you all will be willing to add like parts to each section that you worked on, like the section that you took on. Like Tim, I would really like if you could fill in the stuff about the survey, just because you have the background and the statistics stuff, and then Chica, there's a section in here about social media, which I have your plan, so I'm going to incorporate that, like the 1-pager that you did.
Yeah.
But
Becca, would it be possible for you to just send an email out to the committee with what you need from each person? What your ask is from each of us?
Sure.
That would be great.
Okay, that's easy.
And I do have a comment about where it talks about the Lyceum. So I do think that a conversation needs to be had with the coalition, maybe with Greg Martineau, because the coalition had its first meeting a couple weeks ago, and it was sort of focused on this idea of a lyceum and potentially working with, Deirdre, was it the First Church? First Parish, maybe?
Right, the
First Parish. Yeah,
First
the
Parish.
one on Church Street.
Okay. Oh, thanks, Miriam. Miriam, why am I forgetting that you're also on the coalition? I apologize.
Oh, I'm not in the coalition.
Oh, you're not. Oh, you just
Yeah,
came
we're
to
not.
some of our meetings. Okay.
Yeah.
And so they are having conversations. So I feel like sometimes our conversations are like here, and we just need to bring them together a little bit because they're sort of like going forward with this. So just reconnecting what the plan is. Do you want me to be that liaison?
Yeah, actually, it would be great if you could give the coalition a heads up that we're gonna be recommending that a member of their committee be a permanent fixture on the DEIB committee.
Sure.
And then from there, tell them about the Lyceum. I think the recommendation is, it's a little bit vague the way we have it written in here, which I think is good. Like, the town of Northborough will support the creation, and maybe we get rid of this, appoint a liaison from the DEIB, like that detail about how the diversity committee and the coalition are going to work together to create this. I think that's the part that needs to be, maybe a conversation needs to be had. So if you want to take the lead on that, that'd be great.
Sure, absolutely.
I just wanted to make a comment. I can share this with you guys after the meeting, but if you get a chance, Shrewsbury's task force just released their official recommendation to their board, which I think is a really good resource. And I was reading it before. I think it was really helpful. And after reading it, I also think that we should add a section about public safety. And I'm happy to work on that, but I think that would be a good addition to our recommendation as a DEI committee.
Yeah. What would the recommendation? I mean, I know we've talked about public safety a little bit, like staffing and things like that. Is that what you're referring to?
A little bit of staffing, but also the recommendations on the Shrewsbury task force talks about like SROs and kind of the community's engagement with public safety and that kind of content. And I think, I'm gonna like go through it again, but hold on, let me pull it up. 1 second. I try to look for it. I'm not going to find it now. 1 second.
If you want, ma'am, you don't have to bring it. If you want to just take a look at it and then send us what your thoughts are,
Yeah.
we can talk about it at the next meeting.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
we didn't really talk about, when we talked we haven't talked about SOOs at all. So I want to, I don't want to just throw that in there.
Throw that in there.
because,
Absolutely.
You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? But I do think, again, it's part of the argument for why this committee has to continue, because there's still so much work to do. That's a conversation we want to have. And
Exactly.
we should have it in partnership with the schools and the public safety.
Absolutely. Absolutely not saying throw it in there.
Oh,
I
okay.
do think that's a conversation that we should have, and continuously, an objective of the DEI committee moving forward.
Okay.
I did have one other comment, but anything else on this topic? Okay. So under staffing and training, I know a lot of our conversations revolved on, the hiring process and recruiting more diverse candidates, which is challenging for a multitude of reasons. But I did want to bring up a resource. The Massachusetts Association for School Committees started their annual conference yesterday, and today I was able to attend a session by Another Lens Consulting, which is based here in Massachusetts, which essentially helps organizations look at their hiring process for bias. And it was a really, really informative, great session that I went to. So I recommend them as a resource. So I don't know if that's anything that we would consider as a recommendation, or maybe just keep it on a list of resources.
What's the name, Lauren?
They're called Another Lens Consulting.
Another Lens. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, for future resources. I'm kind of hoping that if we go through a strategic planning process, that will be a piece of that, you know, the recruitment process. What can we do? How do we make it better? Where are our blind spots? And maybe they'll want to work with us. We get to go through that process. So that's great.
Okay.
It's late.
Any other comments? Any
Deirdre,
other
you
business to come? What's that?
I was asking Deirdre, she's okay. She's like losing it.
I think it's officially
Get it
past
together.
bedtime.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anybody else have anything else they wanted to discuss tonight? No?
No.
How about a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Becca, second by Miriam. Roll call vote. Mary Leach,
Aye.
Lauren Bailey Jones,
Aye.
Deidre Writing,
Aye.
Tika Holland,
Aye.
Becca Meekins,
Hi.
Miriam Ibrahimi,
Aye.
and I, Tim Kalen, vote aye. We are adjourned for the evening.